So in my last video, I discussed OpenAI and the fact that when journalists and investigators looked into the company's finances, it turns out that the company's not looking very good. They are literally bleeding billions of dollars and starting to collapse at this rate if something doesn't change. Well, I'm here to extrapolate upon that in this video and highlight how it might be even worse than we might think. I definitely recommend checking this video out as a prelude to the information that I'm about to present here, but just note that OpenAI is essentially the company that kickstarted the current inflation of computing components like RAM, as well as the shortage of such components, as they made a deal with SK Hynix as well as Samsung, the top two makers of RAM, to essentially acquire a huge percentage of RAM wafers and essentially leaving everyone else in the dust, causing a mass panic that forced other AI companies and just corporations in general to start hoarding RAM themselves, seeing that this kind of vicious cycle of hoarding was happening, leaving consumers in the dust, leaving consumers with RAM that, for like 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. Now you're looking at, over $1,000 when it once upon a time used to cost, like $200, $300. And then beyond that, we're looking at a situation where this shortage and this kind of inflation, based on estimations from companies like Micron, another top RAM maker, could last until at least 2028. In just 2026 alone, we're seeing a situation where 70% of memory chips are going to be consumed by data centers. And don't even get me started with GPUs. Going to Amazon right now and looking at GPU prices, you can see just how marked up they are. So for example, a 5090 once upon a time, used to cost like $2,000. Now we're looking at $5,000 for a 5090. Absolutely insane. And already we're starting to see reports that both NVIDIA and AMD are warning partners to bump up prices because price increases are coming from both manufacturers. And then there's SSDs, or solid state drives, which will also be seeing a shortage due to the fact that top manufacturers like Samsung and SK Hynix are reportedly cutting NAND production. So that will definitely affect SSD prices, with certain executives straight up saying that the AI boom means the era of cheap 1 terabyte SSD is over. This executive is from a company called Kioxia, who make SSDs, and this company is reporting that their NAND supply is sold out for this year and likely through 2027. And we have OpenAI to thank for all of this, which is why people are wishing OpenAI such an ill fate. And so when news began to spread that OpenAI could be out of money very soon, people were all about that. There are reports stating that OpenAI could run out of cash by mid-2027, within 18 months, as they burn through billions of dollars, and with every year getting more expensive to both build the AI infrastructure as well as to maintain the infrastructure due to how much it costs. Just the power required to power AI alone costs a ton. So the projections include, burning through $8 billion in 2025, $40 billion in 2028. And for OpenAI's vision to become reality, they need to spend roughly $1.4 trillion on data centers. Here's another report talking about how AI's computational needs are growing more than twice as fast as Moore's Law, pushing toward 100 gigawatts of new demand in just the US by 2030. And then when looking globally, they're estimating closer to 200 gigawatts, meaning this power demand could cost $500 billion in annual spending on new data centers. To make this business viable, OpenAI would have to generate roughly $2 trillion in annual revenue, is what Bain & Company estimates here. And even by their best estimates, even if OpenAI does every potential cost-cutting measure as well as revenue avenues, even in the best case scenario, OpenAI can only cover $1.2 trillion of the $2 trillion annual revenue required to be able to make this viable. And then it doesn't help matters that OpenAI's projected expenditures and losses are far greater than originally predicted. This report right here from Will Lockett noted that OpenAI was set to reach $14 billion in losses in 2026. But the reality is that in the first half of 2025, they managed to have a net loss of $13.5 billion. So the first half of last year reached the projections of what they would have lost this year, which means that in 2026, they'll likely lose significantly more than the projected $14 billion. So yeah, all of that is already bad enough. Quite a few sources are all highlighting essentially big red flags for OpenAI's financial status. And that goes even further with this tweet right here from George Noble, who's a pretty big name in the investment landscape. And he had quite a few thoughts to share about OpenAI that do not paint a good picture for what the future holds for this company. So I'm going to read through this tweet because I think it's important for people to know about what's going on here. And this, by the way, in response to this video right here that features both Satya Nadella and Sam Altman discussing, what they think the future holds for AI, and I'll get to that in a bit. But for now, let's take a look at what George Noble had to say about the current OpenAI situation. Quote, OpenAI is falling apart in real time. In all caps, that's how George Noble, this well-known investor, opens this statement. I've watched companies implode for decades. This one has all the warning signs. OpenAI declared code red in December of last year. Altman sent an internal memo telling employees to drop everything because Google's Gemini 3 is eating their lunch. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff publicly ditched ChatGPT for Gemini after using it for just 2 hours. ChatGPT traffic fell in November, second month-over-month decline of 2025. Meanwhile, Gemini jumped to 650 million monthly active users. So yeah, basically other companies who are also in the AI race and competing with OpenAI are essentially outputting a better product than OpenAI. Their AI is starting to become more advanced, catching up and surpassing OpenAI's. And that's a really bad sign for OpenAI, who are already struggling building the infrastructure of their AI endeavors, as well as, keeping up with costs. But the fact that their product is just straight up inferior than, say, what Google is offering with Gemini, that is kind of like the nail in the coffin for them. This statement continues, the company that was supposed to build AGI can't keep its chatbot competitive. But the real story is the money. It's ultimately always about the money for these corporations. OpenAI lost $12 billion in a single quarter, according to Microsoft's own fiscal disclosures. And for those who don't know, currently OpenAI and Microsoft are in a partnership. Microsoft previously invested billions of dollars into OpenAI and are also helping OpenAI by providing them with Azure cloud computing resources. So yeah, Microsoft is a big reason for why OpenAI is still afloat. But with the losses that are being reported here, I don't know how much longer this deal will be worth it for Microsoft and how long OpenAI can ultimately last, even if they have some Microsoft safety net. But yeah, OpenAI lost $12 billion in a single quarter, according to Microsoft's own fiscal disclosures. And then beyond that, Deutsche Bank estimates $143 billion in cumulative negative cash flow before the company turns profitable. Their analysts put it bluntly. No startup in history has operated with losses on anything approaching this scale. So even by startup implosion standards, OpenAI rises far and above every other one. They're burning $15 million per day on Sora alone. Sora being their image and video generation AI platform. Even people within Sora are nervous, like Sora's lead engineer, who admitted the economics are currently completely unsustainable. Here's the big math problem nobody wants to discuss, George Noble continues. It's going to cost 5 times the energy and money to make these models 2 times better. That's where Moore's law slowing down comes in. That basically summarizes why Moore's law slowing down is so bad for these companies. Basically, to make AI better, they are getting more and more diminishing returns because the computing components can't keep up with how much better AI needs to get for all of this to be worth it. George Noble continues, the low-hanging fruit is gone. Every incremental improvement now requires exponentially more compute, more data centers, more power, and all of that stuff can't keep up with the rate at which companies require it in order to make AI as powerful as they want it to be. And then here's another big kicker. When it comes to progressing OpenAI's AI technology, they've failed on that front recently with, according to George Noble, reports suggesting that OpenAI's large training runs in 2025 failed to produce models better than prior versions. GPT-5 launched to widespread disappointment. Users called it underwhelming and horrible. OpenAI had to restore GTP within 24 hours because users preferred the old model. GTP5 was somehow worse than GTP4. So they've hit a roadblock when it comes to progress and advancement in the technology that they're pursuing. That's not good. Now, they have released GPT 5.1 and 5.2 since. I don't know how much better it is. I've not kept up on that front. But progress for the technology is going slower than expected. And then the electronics components and the power required to make this vision a reality, to keep progressing AI, is just something that is untenable right now. George Noble's statement continues, same complaints each time, too corporate, too safe, robotic, boring. The talent exodus makes this even worse. CTO Myra Murati, gone. Chief Research Officer Bob McGrew, gone. Chief Scientist Ilya Sutskever, gone. President Greg Brockman, gone. Half the AI safety team departed. Multiple executives reportedly cited psychological abuse under Altman's leadership. So even OpenAI's crew is jumping ship before it sinks. And then Elon Musk is suing for up to $134 billion against OpenAI. A federal judge ruled the case goes to jury trial in April. There's plenty of evidence that OpenAI's leaders promised to maintain the nonprofit structure that Musk funded. This court case is looking to be favoring Elon Musk currently, which puts OpenAI in yet more precarious situations. Musk provided $38 million in early funding based on these assurances. Now he wants his share of the $500 billion valuation. OpenAI called it harassment, but the judge disagreed. So beyond just basic economics and infrastructural issues, there are all of these other problems that OpenAI has to deal with that further puts a damper on their ability to make this business viable. And then here we have a prediction from George Noble saying, here's what I think happens next. The AI hype cycle is peaking. The diminishing returns are becoming impossible to hide. Competitors are catching up. The lawsuits are piling up. OpenAI needs to generate $200 billion in annual revenue by 2030 to justify their projections. That's 15 times growth in 5 years while costs keep exploding. I don't see that kind of growth happening personally. Even Sam Altman admitted investors are overexcited about AI. His exact words, quote, "Someone is going to lose a phenomenal amount of money." Well, that certainly does not inspire confidence. If I were running an AI startup with good traction right now, I'd be looking for an exit, sell into the hype before the music stops. Basically, have a bigger fish eat this little fish that's trying to swim in a stream that is just not compatible with this particular fish. And then he continues, my positioning, I'm not touching OpenAI adjacent plays at these valuations. The risk profile is astronomical. If you're exposed to the Magnificent Seven through AI infrastructure bets, consider trimming. The gap between promised revolution and delivered reality has never been wider. The smart money is rotating into sectors where valuations actually reflect fundamentals. Small and mid caps are trading near decade lows relative to big tech, while earnings growth is only marginally lower. Markets can price risk, but they can't price chaos. And OpenAI is chaos dressed up in a $500 billion valuation. Damn. Talk about a scathing review of the current status of OpenAI. But basically what George Noble is saying is that OpenAI is spending so much money for not a whole lot of progress. And then on top of that, you've got lawsuits, you've got people leaving the company. And then beyond that, AI as a whole is just not living to the immense hype surrounding it on the part of investors. Don't get me wrong, the technology is still impressive, but it's starting to plateau a little bit. And it's, whether it's going to proliferate at the level that a lot of these corporations investing in AI want, that remains to be seen. But from folks like George Noble's perspective, it's not looking like AI will reach the levels that a lot of investors anticipate. And the fact that even Sam Altman is coming out saying that investors are overexcited about AI and how someone's about to lose a phenomenal amount of money, that says a lot. Hell, even going to Google right now and looking at trends surrounding AI, you can see that AI and ChatGPT, these terminologies peaked at one point and is starting to trend downwards. And that goes in line with what George Noble is saying, where he insisted that the AI hype cycle is peaking, the diminishing returns are becoming impossible to hide. And all of this, by the way, was in response to this video that I now will, with all that context, demonstrate to you. Here's what Sam Altman had to say to naysayers of OpenAI.
How can the company with $13 billion in revenues make $1.4 trillion of spend commitments? and you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer.
He says that with full confidence, but the numbers don't show that. Like, people are seeing financial reports, and Sam Altman can confidently flaunt whatever he wants. He can, say, no, we're doing way better than the public thinks, but that doesn't make it true. He continues.
I just, enough. People are, I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. I don't think you would,
including myself. Including myself.
People who talk with a lot of breathless concern about our compute stuff or whatever, that would be thrilled to buy shares. So I think we could sell, your shares or anybody else's to some of the people who are making the most noise on Twitter, whatever, about this very quickly. We do plan for revenue to grow steeply. Revenue is growing steeply. We are taking a forward bet that it's going to continue to grow, and that not only will ChatGPT keep growing, but we will be able to become one of the important AI clouds, that our consumer device business will be a significant and important thing, that AI that can automate science will create huge value. So, there are not many times that I want to be a public company, but one of the rare times it's appealing is when those people are writing these ridiculous OpenAI is about to go out of business and, whatever. I would love to tell them they could just short the stock, and I would love to see them get burned on that. But, we carefully plan. We understand where the technology, where the capability is going to go, and how the products we can build around that and the revenue we can generate. We might screw it up. This is the bet that we're making, and we're taking a risk along with that.
You are screwing it up.
A certain risk is if we don't have the compute, we will not be able to generate the revenue or make the models at this kind of scale.
Exactly. And
let me just say one thing, Brad, as both a partner and an investor. There is not been a single business plan that I've seen from OpenAI that they're put in and not beaten it. So in some sense, this is the one place where, in terms of their growth and just even the business, it's been unbelievable execution, quite frankly. I mean, obviously, OpenAI, everyone talks about all the success in the usage and what have you. But even, I'd say all up, the business execution has been just pretty unbelievable.
Of course, Satya Nadella has to say all of this. He's a major investor in OpenAI. He invested billions through Microsoft as a business. And of course, Sam Altman is hyping up how revenue is growing. Everything's okay. That's what he's supposed to say as the CEO of this sinking ship. But that doesn't plug the holes that are the reality of what OpenAI is currently facing. They're facing a lot of seemingly insurmountable challenges. And no matter how much hype he expresses through words, we have to look at the reality of the situation. And looking at financial reports, the reality is that OpenAI is bleeding way too much money for this business to be viable. Sam Altman comes across very confidently saying, yeah, go ahead and try to short our stock and see what happens. But putting his bravado aside, where are the numbers? Where is the tangible evidence showing that OpenAI is headed towards a positive future, and that the sheer volume of money that is being bled by the company doesn't ultimately signal damnation? Because all of the reports, all of the data currently suggests that there is no way that OpenAI can continue like this as a sustainable business. What CEOs ultimately are salesmen for a corporation. When they're public facing, they say all these things as if they know better, but they don't. What knows better is reality and research and, people who are not in it, right? People who can look at things from an outside perspective and look into it, and who are able to just relay exactly what's going on without the bias that comes with being so deeply integrated into this endeavor and this investment that, they want to have yield a ton of money, a ton of revenue for this technology to be adopted en masse so that they can get returns in the near to medium term future. And all the while these pursuits continue, what they don't talk about is the negative impact that they're having in these pursuits in the way that software is becoming more bloated. Microsoft's own Windows, with their implementation of AI, has only made Windows less desirable. The way, quality output of Gen AI in particular is just far worse than what humans can output. The moral implications of the way artwork is being stolen in order for generative AI to function, the way misinformation and deepfakes are becoming more commonplace, how AI as a technology that's trying to replace humans, has been proven time and again to be not entirely reliable, not entirely trustworthy, with it often getting things wrong, whether it's executing on commands of tasks that are asked on the part of humans, or whether it's just giving out information that people request from AI. And then on top of that, the way all this is ultimately fucked over the general masses, the consumers who, now will find themselves having to spend way more money on not only just individual computing parts like RAM and GPUs and SSDs, but also on electronics across the board. Anything that has a computer in it or has memory in it, whether it's cars or now, smart vehicles, whether it's fridges even now have, the smart elements in them. Televisions are now computers. Everything is kind of a computer now. All of these things, all of these electronics will now shoot up in price significantly because of this gold rush and because of the way OpenAI specifically approached this and kickstarted this chain of events and domino effect that fucked over everyone. So no matter how confidently Sam Altman wants to present OpenAI as this great company with a great future, the data shows what it shows, and so people are not buying it. And then on top of that, the sentiments surrounding OpenAI are so vastly negative due to how OpenAI fucked over so many people. And so, people are overjoyed to see the downfall of OpenAI and are praying that the data shown here reflect that OpenAI is headed towards a doomed future. To close out the video, I want to spotlight this specific tweet that I saw that I think aptly summarizes what the future holds when this AI bubble starts to burst, and how we will all in turn be negatively impacted by this gold rush of greed towards this, AI technology, this AI race that has negatively impacted so many different facets of society. It reads right here: the AI bubble is going to have a catastrophic effect on our country in multiple ways. It's overtaxing our electrical generating and transmission capacity. It's appropriating hundreds of millions of gallons of water. It's going to decimate the consumer electronics market, both in terms of price and availability. And it's going to drive unprecedented levels of silicon and rare earth mineral mining. The environmental impacts are also worth considering, and just how much power and water this thing consumes, and the amount of mining required to keep up with the demand that comes with AI data centers. Not to mention that not one of the frontier model companies has turned a profit on AI. To the contrary, each has $1 billion plus monthly burn rate. Each has inked contracts years into the future for hundreds of billions of dollars for all of the above, and the industry has wheedled itself into critical infrastructure and national security. You think the 2008 to 2009 housing market crash was catastrophic? You ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till all these companies demand federal bailouts, which they'll get due to our nation's growing dependence on their continued existence due to the capitalistic nature of this country. Some thought the next major wars would be fought over water. Some thought it'd be fought over rare earth mineral rights. Turns out they'll be fought over all of it as nations vie for AI supremacy. Meanwhile, if you thought cow farts were a major contributor to global warming, wait until you see what a proliferation of massive AI data centers will do to the global environment. Now, obviously, only time will tell how much of this will come to fruition, but I think these fears, like the fact that there's a non-zero chance, more than a non-zero chance of this being the potential future, is something that people should be at the very least alert about. Keep track of what's going on with AI, the impact that it's having on the economy and the environment, and just how the technology itself and its proliferation is having an impact on the way we interact with the world, frankly, the way we interact with art, the way we interact with just like critical thinking and the diminishing of that, because AI is now supposed to take care of every single little thing, every single little thought that we have, every single bit of problem solving, to the point where, like, is it really good for society? It's that question from Jurassic Park. Just because we can, does that mean we should? At the very least, at the level that's going on right now, I don't think AI as a technology should be completely obliterated. It just has to be regulated and used in appropriate ways that can genuinely benefit society, advance technology in ethical and the right ways, and, just do things that genuinely are good for us, rather than, this gold rush towards something that ultimately the first priority is to generate revenue, even if it means using the technology and kind of putting out the technology in ways that are really harmful to society, to the economy, to the environment, to so many different facets of just, humanity. But with all said and done, the short of it is that OpenAI they look pretty fucked right now from where I'm standing based on the data that's out there right now. I don't know if some kind of breakthrough will allow OpenAI to weather the storm and survive the bleeding that's happening right now financially. But OpenAI is just in this really precarious position because they're a startup that's solely dedicated to AI. Whereas like when Microsoft or Amazon or Meta or Google pursue AI, they've got all these other revenue streams from all the other services that they offer, so they can weather things out a bit more. Whereas OpenAI is putting all of their eggs in the AI basket. But at the same time, all of these other corporations, when it comes to the AI sector, they're also bleeding money. They're hoping that in the long-term future, they'll eventually get a return, that this investment will be worth it. But right now, even the corporations like Google and Meta and Amazon and Microsoft who are pursuing this AI venture are losing money, billions of dollars every year, staying afloat through the revenue that they gain from all of their other products and services. But how long can they hold out? How long before this kind of becomes not worth the incredible amount of cost that it takes to build and maintain, especially with infrastructural aspects still not being in place, with hype surrounding AI seemingly peaking, with the proliferation of this technology not going at a rapid enough pace, with technological and infrastructure limitations, with Moore's law slowing down, with how much more power it takes to make incremental progress on AI, with how much diminishing returns you're getting from the current state of things. Like, all of it is currently like woefully stacked against the future of AI and the current gold rush that's happening surrounding that. It feels like there's not a whole lot of thoughtful consideration for implementing this technology in ethical ways. It's just this rush towards something that maybe they didn't think it all through. But that is my take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on everything going on surrounding AI and OpenAI specifically in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.